Born to a mother at 16 years old, to a two-bedroom home. Used to sleep on the floor. At the age of 7 years old, you discovered your dream. You wanted to become an NFL player. You used to get up with your father on Saturday mornings at 5:30 and used to run miles and miles. The first game in your sophomore season, you tore the ligaments. You was out for your junior year. You broke your clavicle the first game. Out for the season. College scouts would come in to see you and they would say, man, you are extremely talented. We just don't know if you're going to make it out of high school, let alone college. He said, son, there is no way that you will make it. Coach Philip Foreman from the University of Tennessee came into Crim High School. Inky, I want to offer you a scholarship to go to the University of Tennessee. You said, Coach, I'm coming. The reporter was making a beeline to Inky Johnson. Do you even think you're going to play at the University of Tennessee? I'm going to start at the University of Tennessee. You played a little bit your freshman sophomore season came. You broke the starting line. You got as strong as you had ever been. You was more of a student of the game. You got the bench press at 315 pounds. You call your grandmother, you call your mother. You say, after this year, our lives are about to change forever. Second game, you guys are playing against Air Force. You guys found yourselves in the dog fight. Fourth quarter, Air Force had just went down and onside, kicked the ball and dropped. Air Force recovered. You guys broke the huddle. You called quarters come. Running back slips out of the backfield. Now he's coming down your side. Quarterback released the ball to the running back. Running back catches it.
Got the pass caught.
Stop. I'm standing between you and the rest of your life. Where do your strength come from? Where do your drive come from? Where do your motivation come from? Where do your perseverance come from? Everything that you've ever been through, everything that you've ever faced, you've had the ability to overcome. You've had the ability to persevere. Everybody that ever made a sacrifice for you in your life, everybody that ever believed in you, everybody that ever gave you an opportunity in your life, you can't let them down. And I can't stop you. I can't stop you. Even if I wanted to, I can't stop you because you're about to get stronger.
Carney back. Got the pass caught. Well, we got a Tennessee player. It's Inky Johnson who's down.
People ask you all the time if you can go back to September 9th, 2006, that game against Air Force, and you can stop that moment, or you can not play in that game, or you knew this situation was about to happen, would you change it? I can't stop this moment because of the people that believed in you and the people that sacrificed so much for you, and the people that saw something in you and you couldn't see it in yourself. To your grandmother, to your mother, to your mentor, to your father, to your family members, to your friends, to the people that looked to you and were inspired and were encouraged and were motivated. You had overcame so much. And by doing that, it gave so many other people strength. So I don't want you to deal with the disappointment of thinking that you disappointed them because your dream has left. I can't change it because of what's about to happen. But even if I could, I wouldn't. Young people, you got a group of people that care about you deeply in this community. And also, Bro John, man, thank you so much for your heart. Thank you for casting the vision. Thank you for being obedient, to serve. I greatly appreciate that, and I'm honored that you will bring me in to your people and share me with your people. But real quick, I got a question that I think is very important and very vital to life. Who in here wants to do something incredible? Okay, you can put your hands down. 3 weeks ago, I encountered a situation, and I'm going to tell you the backdrop to why I asked the question. 3 weeks ago, I encountered a situation to where me and my wife, we've adopted 3 homeless shelters, right? And so I'm very present in Atlanta with homeless. And so at any given moment, you could be riding through Atlanta, you could catch me on the bridge with a homeless gentleman, you can catch me in a shelter doing work with the homeless. And so as a matter of fact, the way that video happened and manifested, the guy from ESPN called me when I was under a bridge working with a homeless gentleman. But a couple of weeks ago, I'm working with a homeless gentleman and I get a call. And it's a mother. When I pick up the phone, I say hello and she's crying. And she says to me, Inky, will you come and get him? And I said, come and get who? She said, my 15-year-old son. She said, he's being disrespectful to me, to authority, to coaches, to teachers, and she said, more than anything, he think he has the right. I said, yeah, I'll come and get him. I said, would you mind putting him on the phone for me? She said, no. She put him on the phone. I said, hey, how you doing, man? He said, hey, I'm doing well. I said, would you mind taking a ride with me? He said, yeah, I'll ride with you. And so I take him downtown under Atlanta to the same bridge that I left when I came to get him, and we stand there and we get out of the car, and it's a homeless gentleman sound asleep on a cardboard box. And I tap the kid on his leg and I say, "Hey, champ," I said, "do you think he planned to be there?" I say, you know, like when you got a dream and goals and aspirations, you plan it out, you're strategic in your approach, but do you think he planned to be sleeping under this bridge in broad daylight on a cardboard box? Like, that's a grown man. Like, the human will is one of the strongest things that we possess. Like, before a person even gets to that point to where they say, "I surrender, I wave the white flag at life," and I get up, like they fight before they get to the point to where they just say, "Man, you know what? Living is more painful than dying," and so I check out, and the kid responds to me, and he says, "No." I said, "If you could take a shot at it, what do you think happened?" I said, "I know you don't know him, so you can't speak to the specifics of the situation, but if you could take a shot at what led to him being up under this bridge, what would you say happened?" And the kid responds to me, he said, "Inky, I really don't know. What do you think happened?" I said, "I think life happened." He said, "Life?" I said, "I guarantee you at a certain point, somebody probably asked him the same question. What do you want to do in your life?" "Man, I want to be great." I guarantee you he had goals, dreams, and aspirations. I guarantee you he had a family and a legacy that he was attached to. I guarantee you somebody came to him and told him something that they saw in him and how great he could become. I guarantee you somebody came to him and told him the potential that he had. But what happened is he said, "Man, I want all of these things," but what he didn't understand was life sent adversity, opposition, and challenges. And life said, "I know you want it, but I'm going to see how bad you want it." And what he found out about himself was, "I don't want it as bad as I think I do." Meaning the detour came, the pivot came, meaning something on his route to accomplish goals, dreams, and aspirations. At a certain point, he had to take another route that he wasn't prepared for. And when the adversity came, the fire that was on the inside of him didn't burn greater than the fire that was around him, and so it crushed him. I'm standing here before you today, young people. I'm not anything special, but I'm the product of a lot of people's belief and motivation when they saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And at every phase of my life, the only difference between me and some of the people that I grew up with, I wasn't arrogant and I listened. I grew up in inner city Atlanta in a 2-bedroom home with 14 people. I didn't sleep in a bed by myself until I went on my collegiate visit to the University of Tennessee, and they put me up in the Marriott, and my host didn't understand why I didn't want to go to a sorority party. We come out of a restaurant, Calhoun's on the river. My host is with me. He said, "Inky, we're going to have a great night." He said, "Man, I'm going to take you to a sorority party. I'm going to take you to a basketball game. Man, we're about to have fun tonight." And I said, "Do you mind taking me to the Marriott?" He said, "What, you want to change?" I said, "No, if you don't mind, can you just take me to the Marriott?" We pull up to the Marriott. I'm getting out of the car. He taps my leg. He said, "Man, are you sick?" I said, "No, I'm not sick." He said, "Man, I don't know if you've ever been to a college sorority party, but they get pretty wild. You might need to go to this." I said, "Man, this is my first time sleeping in a bed by myself. I don't care about a sorority party. And it's a king size at that." I went up in that room. I called my boys back in Kirkwood because all of us slept on the floor. They pick up the phone. I said, "Man, y'all got to go to college." They said, "Ink, we don't know about that." I said, "You get your own king size bed." I thought that was the drill until they put me in a dorm on the twin size. But what happened at the ripe age of 7 years old, I experienced a lot of different situations and circumstances, right? And I just had this crazy thought that, man, if I could just make it to the NFL, all of my family's problems, everything that we're facing would somehow disappear. If I could just make it to the NFL, like I can contribute to my community, I can help people, like I can do all of the things that I want to do. If I just accomplish this dream, every bit of pain that I experience, it will be all worth it. I still remember when me and my 3 younger cousins, we were going to the cafeteria for breakfast every other morning, and we had a cafeteria administrator, a guy by the name of Mr. Dukes. And as soon as we would hit the cafeteria, my 3 little cousins, they'll sprint to the front of the line, push who's ever in front of the line, out of line, and they were trying to eat, and the same thing would happen. Johnson boys hit the wall. And he would put us on the wall, and he would say, "Inky, you're the oldest. Why do you let them do this?" And I would be too embarrassed to tell him that we didn't eat the night before, and so I would just stand back on the wall, and I would be quiet. But one morning, he pushed it a little bit too far. "Johnson boys, get on the wall." We go to the wall. "Inky, you're the oldest. Why do you let them do this? I'm getting sick and tired of it." And I responded to him. I said, "We didn't eat last night." He said, "Oh, I didn't know." I said, "You didn't ask." Because most people, even when they ask a question, they're asking with the intent to reply, not the intent to understand.
And when it happened, what happened to me was, I said, man, if I could just make it to college, nobody in my family has been to college, I could break a generational curse, and I could show the people in my community a different way. But man, if I make it to the NFL, I can help my mother in ways that I never imagined. I can help my grandmother in ways that I've never imagined. And every day we would walk out of that door, I would always trail my cousins, and my grandmother would say to me, Inquarius. That's my real name, Inquarius, not Inky. My grandfather gave me Inky because he had a problem with pronouncing Inquarius. And my grandmother would say to me, Inquarius. I would say, yes, ma'am. She would say, learn from the mistakes of other people. You can't make them all yourself. And in my community, we had a drug dealer on every single corner. Most of them came from my household. And one night, we're playing tackle football in the street before I got in organized sports. And one night, the sun was going down. I just told the coaches this story because of the impact that it made in my life. And a blue pickup truck was coming down the street, and we back out of the street to let the car go by. And as the car was going by, it slightly went past us, and it parked on the sidewalk. And out of the truck gets a white guy. And at the time in my neighborhood, there were no white people. And so automatically, what do you think everybody did? They start running. They think he's the police off the bat, right? He's the cops. They take off running, right? Nicest guy in the world. Walks up in between our games. He said, hey, man, would y'all like to play organized sports? I said, man, I would love that. Where you been, brother? He said, go in the house and get your guardian. I run in the house. My Uncle JJ is there. I said, hey, Unc, it's a guy outside. Will you please come and talk to him? My uncle says, sure. My uncle comes outside. The guy says, my name is Trey Hurst. He said, listen, I don't even supposed to be over here. He said, I brought a kid home 3 blocks up. I just rode down the street to see what the neighborhood was like. I see these knuckleheads playing tackle football in the street. I run a league across town. I think if y'all bring them out, get them signed up, be a great opportunity for them. It could really help them in life. My uncle responds, sir, we greatly appreciate it, but we just don't have the money for anything like that. And he pointed at me because I'm standing face to face with the coach because I really wanted to play. And my uncle said his mother is working a double shift at Wendy's right now. She definitely doesn't have. My mother had me at 16 years old. And the coach responds to him. He said, I tell you what. He said, you bring him to the park tomorrow, not only will I sign him up, he pointed at me. He said, I'll sign the other 3 up as well. My uncle brought us to the park the next day. I stood there and I watched this coach that I didn't even know that came down the street the day before, and he took all his money out of his pocket and he paid for me and my 3 little cousins to play ball. And what I later discovered in my family, it made such an impact. Nobody in my family had been to college, but me and my 3 little cousins that coach signed up in that street that night to play football. All 3 of us went to college, and we broke a generational curse in our family. But I wanted to understand what was the spirit that this coach was living his life with. Like, it was his essence. It wasn't just a thing that he did because he wanted to do it and get a return on something. Like, that was just who he was. And so one night I asked him a question. I said, Coach, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you live life that way? Like, why do you just help people? Why do you don't even think about what they're doing with what you're helping them with? Why do you don't go through life wondering if somebody is trying to get over on you? Like, I never heard him once say that. Like, if he helped somebody, he helped them, that was it, right? It wasn't about, if I help you, you got to do this for. Why do you live your life that way? And he told me one night in front of my 2-bedroom home, 14 people, I'm standing on the sidewalk after he dropped me off, and I said, why do you do what you do? And he got out of his truck and he came and he stood beside me and he said, Inky, I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want you to ever forget it. He said, as long as you make sure that somebody else's life is okay, son, God will always make sure that your life is okay. And what he was telling me was, son, as long as you live your life with a greater purpose than just yourself, the opposition, the adversity, the challenges, the paralyzed right arm and hand, like all of those challenges that you will face in your life, if you live life with a greater purpose than just yourself, you will use it as fuel, and it won't drain you because your focus and your perspective will be a lot different. You won't be a selfish person, and you won't just be going through life doing things for personal gain. You know how you can spot a selfish person? They give up at the first sign of adversity. Because when a person gives up at the first sign of pressure and adversity and a challenge, you can't be thinking about anything except yourself. Because when you think about sacrifices that others have made for you, it's almost impossible to give up. Right? When you think about what somebody saw in you when you didn't see it in yourself, it's almost impossible to give up. And as a young kid, the only thing I did was rented other people's faith when I wasn't strong enough to possess my own. The only thing I did was rented other people's belief until I got strong enough to possess my own. The only thing I did was rented other people's motivation until I got strong enough to possess my own. But the moment I got strong enough to possess my own, it was my responsibility to pay it forward back into the world. And I get into the 8th grade and I bump into a math teacher and a basketball coach that later walked my wife down the aisle at our wedding. And I'm in the gym one morning, and he came to me and he said, son, I saw you on the corner in your neighborhood. I said, yeah, I was hanging out with my uncles. He said, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. I saw you on the wrong corner in your neighborhood. I said, I was hanging out. He said, no, I'm going to pick you up every morning before school until you graduate high school. And I'm going to play you in a game of one-on-one basketball, and I'm going to read you a proverb. I said, man, you bluffing. The next morning at 6 o'clock, I'm sleeping on the floor with my cousins. My mother comes and shakes me. I'm wiping coal out of my eyes. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, your 8th grade math teacher and basketball coach is at the door. I said, oh, you serious? And one morning after our game of one-on-one basketball, he sits me down on the bench. He makes me recite a proverb. The principal walks in and he says, DeMarco Mitchell, that was my teacher's name, 23 years old, had 3 kids of his own, and he adopted 3 more kids from the same school system because he knew when they left school, they didn't have anywhere to go. And the principal says to him, I heard you've been given Inky proverbs. He said, yes, sir, I have. He said, stop it or I will have to fire you. My teacher stood up to the principal and he said, well, you're just going to have to fire me then because this life is worth it. And I said, you willing to put the way you feed your family on the line for me? He said, every day of the week. I said, I got to give you a return on your investment. And the summer going into my 9th grade year, people would ask me the question, Inky, where are you going to high school? You could play ball, man. Where are you going? I said, I'm going to Crim. They said, you want to go to college? I said, yep. They said, don't go to Crim. I said, it's 5 minutes away from my house. You want to go to college? I said, yep, don't go to Crim. My own mother came to me, Inky, what are you thinking about doing for high school? I said, I'm going to Crim. Inky, you want to go to college? Yes, ma'am. Don't go to Crim. I said, oh, now I got to go. And my first day at Crim High School, we had a cop at every door and a metal detector at every door, and they searched every kid from head to toe before they walked into the school. My first day, true story. I walked to school, right? And I'm walking to school with my guys, and I'm telling them how, man, we're about to go to Crim. We're going to change the atmosphere. We're going to change the culture. You know, we're going to be the first guys to go to college from Crim. They're looking at me, but they're really not feeling it because of the environment that we're going into. And environments are important, right? At a certain point, if you don't get strong enough to possess your own belief, your environment will change you before you change it. And we walk up to the door, and I get there, and we got a cop, and I know the drill. I see it happening. I'm standing in line. So as soon as I get there, I spread my arms. I put my head up to the ceiling. He's searching me. He's patting me down. He gets to my shoes, and he starts working his way back up. I spread my legs. He gets to my chest, and he says to me, what's your plan, little man? I say, oh, I'm going to college. I'm going D1. He responds, you'll probably go to cell block D1. And he goes to walk off. I walk beside him. I tap his arm. He turns around. So you got the wrong guy. He said, no, I know about you. He's sarcastic, the whole 9. I said, you do? Yeah, you had 2 uncles that came to the same school, right? I said, yes, sir. He said, they could play basketball like you, right? They were great athletes. I said, yes, sir. He said, aren't they serving 13 years and 40 years at the federal penitentiary, not even 10 minutes away from these front doors? I said, yes, sir. He said, exactly. Apple doesn't fall far from a tree. You'll probably end up in cell block D1. Walked off, I walked with him. I tapped his chest. He turned around. I said, I don't know who you've been dealing with. I said, but you ain't dealt with me. I said, I'm telling you, you got the wrong guy. He said, we'll see. My senior year when I got my scholarship from Tennessee, you know the first person I went to see? I didn't go see my mother first. I didn't go see my math. I went straight to that cop, and he was on lunchroom duty. I slammed the paper down on the lunchroom table. I slid it across to him. He got it. He looked at it. He said, let me ask you a question. How did you do it? He said, the reason I challenged you that way, I didn't try to belittle you. I didn't try to discourage you. He said, I challenged you to see would you fight back, and you did. But how did you do it? Because every kid in the school, they want something. That's why I said, who wants to do something great? And every hand went up, but it's a gap between what you want to do and actually making it happen. It's a lot of things that happen in between. That's the reason why people don't see their dreams, aspirations, and goals manifest. Like, well, how did you do it? And I said, oh, you thought I just wanted to go to college. You didn't understand. I was trying to break a generational curse in my family. The whole time the goal was a lot bigger than me. You thought I just wanted to go to college. Every morning I stepped into the school, I wanted to change the perception of the school. You thought I was just trying to go to college. I wanted to change the way they spoke about kids that came from my neighborhood. And so your words, they never even penetrated me. It was what my coach was telling me when I was 7 years old, when he said to me, son, as long as you make sure that somebody else's life is okay, son, as long as you live your life with contribution, son, as long as you live your life and you're not a selfish individual, but you're a selfless individual, individual, the opposition, the adversity, and the doubt, it won't faze you, son. And I told him, that's how I did it. But you know the coolest thing that happened? Had 3 little cousins that came right behind me into those same doors, looked that same cop in the face, and all 3 of them went to college. We crushed him. But when I got to college, I messed around and got on the same street as my dream. I'm talking about I could see it. I could taste it, I could smell it. What happens when you want something and you get what you want? Or better yet, what happens when you don't get what you want? Because in life, the problem is not that people can't handle the blessings, because we all know what to do when everything goes great. Like we all know what to do when the sun is shining, we all know what to do when there's food on the table, we all know what to do when we get the grade that we want. The problem isn't that people can't handle the blessings, the problem is that people can't handle the burdens. Meaning when they don't get what they want, or things don't turn out the way that they wanted to, or they get put in an uncomfortable situation or position, and things start to ravel out of control, and they got to step back and they try to figure out how to assess the situation and what to do with the opposition and the chat. That's when the problems happen. But I got in a position in my life, I'm looking down at my dream, I got the paperwork for my dream, everything was lining up, and the only thing I had to do for the first time in my life was do what I love. It wasn't the extra distractions. I'm in college, I'm at UT. The atmosphere was set. Everybody wanted to make it to the next level, right? Everybody wanted to go to the NFL that was playing during my time. Everybody who had the same goals, dreams, and aspirations. And one day I get my paperwork back from the NFL, and it says Inky is a projected first-round draft pick. Automatic, multi-millionaire. I'm like, man, thank you, God. I asked my coach, I said, all I got to do is play football? He said, all you got to do is play football, baby. Your ticket is wrote. And I go out the first game, get an interception, couple big hits, play great. Second game, playing against Air Force. Tough game. The game is about over. 2 minutes left in the game. Quarterback drops back, throws the ball to a guy coming down my sideline. Guy catches it. I go to hit him. I pretty much sized him up, knew how I wanted to hit him to pop the ball out. And as soon as I hit him, it seemed as if every breath in my body left. My body went completely limp. I fell to the ground and I blacked out. Never happened to me before. My eyes open. My teammates ran over to me and they said, "Ink, get up, let's go." I said, "I can't." They said, "What do you mean you can't? You always get up. Like you kamikaze. This your game. Get up. Let's finish the game." I said, "No, man, I can't." They said, "Ink, it's 2 minutes left in the game. Like you can nurse your injury after the game, man. Let's finish the game out. Get up, let's play." I said, "No, you don't get it. There's a shock going from my neck to my toes. I can't feel anything." The shock eventually left and it stayed in my right arm and hand. I remember as they brought the spine board out, I'm sitting there and they put me up on the spine board and they're wheeling me off the field and they get me by the ambulance and my father is standing by the ambulance. And my father's looking like he's seen a ghost, right? And I say to my father, I said, "Pops, I got him, right? I laid it on him, right?" And he responds to me, he said, "Yeah, but I think you got the worst part of this one, Ink." They rolled me up in the ambulance. The doctor said, "Ink, we'll take you over, run a couple tests, bring you back into the room. We'll tell you what's up. Shouldn't be anything too serious." They take me over, they run the test, they bring me back into the room. Mother comes in, kisses me, prays for me, taps me on my shoulder. "Son, you'll be fine. Everything will be okay." And she goes to walk out. And as she's walking out, doctor comes running in from the opposite side, and as he's running, he's screaming, "Guys, get in here. We got to rush him back to surgery. He's about to die." I said, "Die?" I'm like, man, you can't use another word? Like, you know how in the dictionary you got the synonyms? Like, use another word. Like, die is a strong word, man. I'm like, "Die?" He's like, "Yeah, you about to die." It's like, I hate to tell you, man, but you ruptured a subclavian artery in your chest. You're bleeding internally. We got to rush you back, take that main vein out of your left leg, or you won't be here in the morning. And the next morning I woke up, they had cut me 6 times down my left eye. They cut me one time across the left side of my neck, one time across the right side of my neck. They cut me twice through my right ribs. They cut out my right pec. They cut me from the bottom of my armpit to the bottom of my hand. They put 350 staples in my body. They bandaged me from my neck to my knees. This ain't lip service. The next morning I woke up, I had to learn how to walk again. To the night prior, I was running a 4.38 in a 40-yard dash. I was bench pressing 325 pounds. I was jumping a 40-inch vertical. To the next day I wake up, I can't even tie my own shoe. My roommates and my friends had to help me take a bath because there was certain incisions on my body that I couldn't get wet. They had to go to the grocery store. They had to cut up trash bags. They had to figure out ways to tape them on my body so they can help me take a shower. I had to go to disability services, where the people had certain disabilities, and I'm sitting there because I had been right-hand dominant my whole life, and I could no longer use my right arm and hand. I had to learn how to write all over again with my left hand. My life completely changed overnight. And instead of saying, man, why me? Like, God, I worked for this, I stayed focused, I got close to it, and now you're going to let me, check out of now you're going to let my career and let me make it, get the millions, take care of my family. Like, why now? Instead of saying that, I thought about the situation, and I said to myself, Inky, is this it? Like, does one bad chapter define the book? Like, when people say, man, he was a great athlete, but the moment he hit adversity, you never heard from him again. I started forward thinking. I said, what would they say to my son and my daughter? Like right now, me and my wife, we've been blessed with a 5-year-old son, 6-year-old daughter. Like one day when people speak about me to them, will they say, man, your daddy was a great athlete, but the moment he hit adversity, his life just snowballed and nobody ever heard from him again. And he just made excuse after excuse after excuse because something happened to him in life that he didn't expect and he felt like it wasn't right. Like as people, when do you become stronger than your strongest excuse? Like when it's valid, you can use it, you can justify it, but you're still stronger than your strongest excuse. And I said, Inky, right now with the opposition and the adversity, how do you repay the people that's helped you get to this point? And I thought about my coach that helped me when I was 7 years old and he took money out of his own pocket. I thought about my 8th grade math teacher and basketball coach that told me every day, son, never let your circumstances define you. I thought about my grandmother that told me every day before I walked out of the door, son, learn from the mistakes of other people. You can't make them all yourself. And they ordered me every machine on the face of this planet for my arm. They ordered me arm skateboards. You know how you guys ride a skateboard? I had an arm skateboard. Right? I'm trying to learn how to flex my arm. I tore all the nerves in my brachial plexus and I ruptured my subclavian artery. They thought I just ruptured my artery. They didn't know I had tore the nerves from my spine. Your brachial plexus is the nerve roots that come from your spine. And the reason you could do this, the reason you can do that, the reason you can do all of the flexion, that's your brachial plexus. I ripped them out. They can't go back in. And so as soon as I ripped them out, my arm was completely dead. My hand, completely dead. And they sent me on trip after trip to Rochester, Minnesota with these nerve specialists. And I would go there 7 days a week, rehab, every machine, doing these exercises, and I would get up off of the table and I would say, what do you got for me, man? Like, what are you seeing? And here's the trick about a brachial plexus avulsion. It's not like an ACL. It's not like an MCL. It's not a shoulder injury. And so they can't tell you, okay, in 3 months you'll be here, 6 months you'll be here, 9 months you'll be here, a year and a half. They don't tell you that because nobody knows. And so eventually you just got to trust the process and your work ethic and your attitude and your perspective about it. But in trusting the process, what happened was it shaped it and it molded my mentality to that of such, could I be committed to the process of what I was doing without being emotionally attached to the results of what I was doing? Meaning, I'm going to say it again, because we got a lot of people in society that's driven by rewards. Right? We got a lot of people in society that's driven by results. We got a lot of people in society that's driven by materialistic and superficial things, and the moment they don't get it, they're not the same individual. We got a lot of people that's driven by things, and they got to get driven by, hey, you do hard, you get this. And the moment it don't go the way they wanted to, they say, man, you know what? I didn't get the reward I wanted. I'll stop. It's not their essence. Right? It's not who they are to show up and just work hard. It's not who they are to show up and be compassionate. It's not who they are to show up and be dedicated and say, whether I get the outcome that I want or not, I'm still going to give everything I got to it simply because this is who I am as a person. And I would get up off of that table and they would just say, Inky, come back tomorrow. And I got toward the 2-year mark. I'll never forget it. Imagine going to rehab for an injury for 2 years, 7 days a week straight. And the only thing they could tell you at the end of each day is, come back tomorrow. And toward the 2-year mark, I get up off the table, and there was a doctor by the name of JD, my guy. And I jumped up off the table like I usually do. I'm hyped. I said, JD, what you got for me, man? And he dropped his head. And he said, Ink, I hate to tell you, man, but you'll probably never be able to use that arm and hand another day for the rest of your life. And I responded to him and I said, physically. He said, physically? I said, yeah, physically, JD, I'm out of commission. You know what the coolest thing in the world to me was when I was younger? Because me and my father didn't form a relationship until I was older, right? And the coolest thing in the world to me, it had nothing to do with sports, right? In my neighborhood where I grew up, at one point they called it Little Vietnam because it was so violent, right? And so we had a place that when you went across the tracks, it was a totally different environment. And they had a swimming pool, right? And I would always go across the tracks when I got a little time, and I would walk by the swimming pool, and I thought the coolest thing in the world was when I saw a father, and he would grab a kid, or a gentleman would grab a kid, and they would throw him up in the swimming pool, and the kid would go crazy and laugh, and they would catch him. And I would say, man, I can't wait until one day I get a son or a daughter, and I could throw him up in the pool, and I could catch him. And when he was telling me, Inky, you'll probably never be able to use that arm or that hand again, what he was saying to me was, I wasn't thinking about the NFL. It's like, man, I want to get the opportunity to throw my son or my daughter up in a pool. Like, I won't get the opportunity to hug my mother. You know, you got people that take for granted hugging their mother, hugging their sister, hugging their grandmother. Like, you know how bad I wish I could hug my mother with 2 arms? You know, I got 3 little sisters. You know how bad I wish I could grab my 3 little sisters and bear hug them? You know how bad I wish I could grab my wife with 2 arms and just hug her? How bad I wish I could grab my daughter or my son and just hug them with 2 arms, and I can't? But when I told him, I said, JD, physically, what I was telling him was, physically, I'm out of commission. But I would use this arm in his hand every day of my life by the way that I live my life for the rest of my life, because the thing I would never do is let a situation or a circumstance define my life. Young people, I want you to understand something. The person you're becoming is stronger than anything that you will ever face. I'm going to say it again so you can catch it. The person that you're becoming, right? You know why people give up? When people are not growing, people give up because they're stagnant, right? But the person you're becoming, the goals, the dreams, the aspirations, at a certain point, when you look at it, your reason for doing it and your driving force forward has to be a lot greater than just you, because if you encounter something that you didn't expect and it catches you off guard, if it just hits you, it's a possibility that you can give up. But when you get hit with it, if you think about your mother or you think about somebody that sacrificed and believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself, it's a strong possibility you will face that adversity, embrace it, and immediately figure out a way to use it to add value to the world and every environment that you go into. I do what I do because I care about people. Point blank, period. Like, I serve every single day. I didn't want to speak. I tried everything in my power not to speak. I tried to get jobs at rec centers. I tried to do everything, and God closed every single door I tried to go in, until it brought me to my knees, until I was in a situation where the only thing I had was my wife, my daughter, and a book that I had just written a month prior to my situation, to where I went to my knees. I tried to work at my neighborhood rec center. God, nope. I tried to work at the Boys and Girls Club. God, nope. I'm trying to work at colleges. God, no. People were telling me you're overqualified. I'm like, okay, I'll be underqualified. Just let me work. I got a daughter I need to feed. And one morning I got up, young people, and you know what happened? I was staying in my wife's grandmother's home because I had just moved from Knoxville to Atlanta 3 years ago. And it was a 2-bedroom home, and the grandmother was in one room, and my wife, me, and my daughter was in the next room. I didn't have any money. My daughter was sleeping in a swing that somebody bought her for a birthday. Every morning I got up and I looked at it, it hurt me to my heart. And one morning I got up, I looked at my wife and I had my book, and I said, I'm about to go meet Oprah Winfrey. My wife looked at me, she said, you know Oprah? I said, nope. She said, you know anybody that worked with Oprah? I said, nope. She said, you sure? I said, absolutely. She said, go for it. I take off driving up to Knoxville. I call my friend Jeff. He's a lawyer. He pick up, hey, Ink, what's up? I said, Jeff, you're not going to believe it, man. I'm headed to Chicago to meet Oprah. Ink, you know Oprah? Nope. You know anybody that work at Harpo Studios? Nope. He said, Ink, I know you're a wildly ambitious and driven person, but I think you need to hang up and, You're in Chattanooga right now? I said, yep. He said, call me back in an hour. You'll be to Knoxville. And he said, I just don't want you to go up to Chicago and get disappointed because the chances of that happening is pretty much a long shot. The hour passes. I get to Knoxville. I call Jeff. He pick up. He said, Ink, you still going? I said, yep. He said, stop by and pick me up. We get to Chicago that night. The next morning we get up. I go to the front desk. I said, hey, can you point me in the direction of Harpo Studios? And Jeff was standing in the corner. He was about to go work out. And I could see he was peripheral me as I was talking to the people. They gave me directions. I'm going to walk out of the door. And Jeff said, Inky, wait. Jeff is like 45. Jeff said, Inky, wait. I want to go over with you, man, because I really care about you. I don't want your heart to be broken, man. I said, all right, I'll wait. We get in a taxi. We get up to Harpo Studios. We jump out of the car. It was a coffee shop across the street. Jeff jumps out. Jeff said, Ink, I know this won't be long. I'm going to go in and get a cup of coffee. I'll see you in about 3 minutes. I said, okay. I got my book and I got on a suit that's about a 3X that I got from one of my cousins. And every door that opened, I would run into the door. I would say, hey, Inky Johnson, man, I drove up from Atlanta. I got my book. I want to get it to Oprah. Get out of here. We don't do that. I'm like, man, I thought y'all represented Oprah. Y'all are mean. And so I got really frustrated. I went around the back of the building. I sat down in the parking lot. I put my back against the wall. I looked up at the sky, said a prayer. I said, God, man, I thought this was you. I get up, I walk around the side of the building. I'm like, man, I'm going to be looking like a fool. My wife is going to be mad at me. And I come around the side of the building, and it's a homeless gentleman sitting on the side of the sidewalk. And he looks over at me, and I said, hey, man, how you doing? He said, hey, man, how you doing? I said, man, I'm great. I said, how are you? He said, man, I'm great. Having a great time. And by that time, I looked up to my left, and the only person that was coming down the sidewalk was Oprah, and the security guard was trailing her. He was doing a light jog to catch up with her. I stood up. She walked directly to me. She grabbed my suit. She opened it. I said, that's a nice suit. I said, thank you. I said, would you mind taking a picture with me? She said, sure. We take a picture. I said, this is my book. I wrote my book. Would you mind taking it? She said, yeah, I'll take it. She said, well, I got to get in and do my show. I said, thank you so much for your time. I went to walk off. Her security guard said, hey, young man, stop. I stopped. He said, I want to tell you something. He said, now, I don't know what this moment means. He said, but I just want you to know what just happened doesn't happen. He said, Oprah doesn't stop on the street for anybody. He said, usually when a situation like that happens, she'll send me up and she'll say, go clear them out. I'll come and I'll just clear them out. She'll go into the building. He said, like I said, I don't know what it means. I don't know if you'll be on a show, book club. Like, I don't know if any of those things will happen. He said, but I just want you to know that moments like that never happen. I said, thank you so much, man. And I went to walk off. I got the picture. I started sending it to friends. I put it up on social media, and people started hitting me back. They're like, Ink, you going to be on a book club? Ink, you going to be on a show? I said, I don't know. I really don't care. They said, what do you mean you don't care? I said, what you all don't understand, what just happened in terms of my level of faith and how I live my life. I got up from Atlanta, Georgia one morning, and I said, I'm going to meet Oprah Winfrey. And there was a dream, a goal, an aspiration. And to most people, it was a long shot. But man, God put me right front and center. And I put my book in her hand. And I said, God, if this is how we're rocking, if this is how we're living life, let's go. And I've been on a mission ever since then to impact, to encourage, to inspire, and to add value every single day of my life. When you get up, the only favor I ask of you young people, make the things that you're a part of and the things you do a lot bigger than you. That's the only favor I ask of you, because that's beautiful and that's smart and that's strong and that's powerful and you even smell good. Like all of that you have right now, all of that you possess right now, the only thing I will tell you is at a certain point in your life, you're going to face something and money won't help you get out of it. You're going to face something and who you know won't help you get out. You're going to face something and how smart you are, it won't matter. You're going to face something and how beautiful you are, it will no longer matter. And you know what's going to matter? Why you do what you do and how you do what you do. People are driven by two things in life. It's not anything materialistic, superficial, and it's not a financial number. People are driven by who they become and what they give. My only challenge to you, every single day of your life, with the things you're a part of and the things you do, shift your perspective, be grateful for it. But most importantly, Live your life with a greater purpose than just yourself. So when you hit the rough patches, when you hit the opposition, when you hit the adversity, you embrace it and you figure out a way to use it. 75% of life is beautiful. It's fun. It's hilarious, right? It's beautiful. But it's that 25% when somebody you love gets sick and you can't do anything about it. It's that 25% when you 8 games away from becoming a first-round NFL draft pick and you've been working since you were 7 years old and you come in contact with an injury and it changes your life overnight. It's that 25% when somebody you love get hit with cancer and you don't know what to do. It's that 25% when a spouse or a parent gets sick and you just got to sit there and figure out a way to use it. Life is made up of the 25%. That's why I'm telling you, it's never about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens to you. That's why Martin Luther King said, in life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing to help others? You judge a person's character not by where they stand in times of comfort and convenience. You judge their character by where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. Adversity, opposition, and challenges are meant to make you a better person, a wiser person, and a stronger person. I'm going to leave you with this. Always remember, life is happening for you and not to you. I'm going to say it again because repetition deepens the impression. Life is happening for you and not to you. God bless you, and I love you. Thank you.